Oh. Martha will start pursuing. I just want to remind you, hey, if you really like the book, you're selling the books right over there. Highly encouraged. Martha Will, of course, has a long history in science fiction and fantasy, producing a number of notable series. I just, for example, finished a book, City of Bone, that was amazing. We're doing Witch King in my class right now, which just came out, which is really exciting. And of course, the very, very popular Murderbot Diaries, which are incredible, and you should definitely read them. We all need a socially anxious robot in our lives, right? So without further ado, I'll turn things over to Mark. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to read first, and then we're going to do question and answer. It's about the flame. It's a short story called Home Habitat Range Indian Territory, Dr. Densa story that was published in Tor.com. And it's set after exit strategy 4. Is this really a good idea? There is no way to honestly answer that question without being insulting. So Ida Densa opts for, if I'd known the survey team might almost be murdered in a corporate sabotage attempt, I would have picked another planetary franchise. She's in one of the Planetary Council offices on Preservation Station, talking to a friend, a fellow counselor who was planetary user last term, and should know better than to have this conversation. The office is a bland one meant for temporary work. The chairs are comfortable, but it's undecorated. The walls are default cool silver blue. It's making her uncomfortable in a way it hasn't any other time she's been in here. Maybe someone's adjusted the local environmentals badly. The air feels still and oppressive, though it's not warm. It makes her skin creep. It's the exact same size as the room she was held prisoner in on Transworld and Hydra. It would be unbearable if not for the message packet in her feed. It frames size. That wasn't what I meant. She knows it wasn't what I meant, and her answer is a lie anyway. Knowing what would happen, she wouldn't choose a different planet, a different body company, because the insect unit would still be someone's property, would be waiting for the contract or the negligence or greed or indifference of its clients got it killed. If not for Sec Unit, Ida Densa would be dead, her body dumped in a recycler somewhere on Transworld or some other supposedly useful transit station, for the value of neutral that meant whatever the highest bidder wants. It's difficult for Frank and the other counselors and her family, and almost everyone else she's spoken to since returning home to understand that. But none of them have any real experience with the corporation realm, except as a source of cartoonish villains in media serials. A frame adds, no one is questioning your response to the original situation. Ida's lost the thread of the conversation, and unlike Sec Unit, she can't run back a recording to see what she missed. She needs to suggest that they leave this room and go up to the council office with the windows looking over the admin foyer, but they need privacy for this talk. And even though Frank is a friend, it would be a sign of weakness she can't afford. Oh yes, she was unfairly intimating that he had said that her choice of survey role was at fault. It's not, and that's not what he meant, but she wants to make him say what he does mean. She steeples her fingers. That was the inciting incident. The frame is frustrated and really wants the best for her and for preservation, which is what makes this so awesome for both of them. It's hard to make a proper argument when you're both on the same side. He says, you brought a corporate, he hesitates. She wonders if he was going to say killing machine. He finishes, a product of corporate surveillance capitalism and authoritarian enforcement of the seat of our government. I agree your reasons were good, but this is a situation that has to be addressed. There we go. That's something she can work with. The killing machine in question has just sent her yet another message packet. They're piling up in her feed, and if she would stop encouraging the Sec Unit by opening them, it would probably stop. They're all formal requisition forms for preservation station security, requests for increasingly improbable armaments. She responds to the latest with, I don't even know what that is. It's a good thing she understands Sec Unit's sense of humor. To frame, Ida says, the situation is a person who saved my life multiple times and the lives of the rest of my team. Sec Unit is also a person who is not supposed to have access to the requisition forms or the station security systems at all. She knows Sec Unit is not so much taunting her with its abilities as refusing to pretend to be anything other than it is. and then for the best, because being honest about that is the only way forward. If she's honest with herself, which she hasn't been, not since arriving back home, she would admit that being in this room has put her in a cold sweat. It helps that a friend's here, but she would have to get up and walk out if not for those message packets. A friend is a good person, and we won't make the argument that Second is not a person, not qualified as a refugee under preservation law, because they are all refugees in the Preservation Alliance, descended from people who were left to die because rescue was deemed not cost effective. Because they stand on this station built from the ship that saved their grandparents' lives, that helped them for no other reason than because it was there and he could. A friend asks her, can you separate that person from the purpose they were created for? Now that's an argument. Second is a person, potentially a very dangerous person. But right now, a friend and the other counselors who agree with him have no evidence to suggest that Second would act on that potential. The problem is that part of her mind still believes she's on Tranquil and Haifa, held prisoner by corporate murderers. Being aware of that should help, but it doesn't. The message packets echo that moment when Sec Unit pinged her feet and she knew rescue was possible. The moment she became herself again and not a bargaining chip. That helps. Ida spreads her hands, palms up and open. She says, I couldn't. The person separated itself. A friend's mouth turns down, as if he wishes she had a more definitive answer. She knows he doesn't like this conversation any more than she does. They would both like to pretend that everything is all right. Ida wishes she could separate herself from everything that happened. She can't. They talk for another 20 minutes, back and forth, and reach no conclusion but a wry agreement, but the rest of the council will also want to have this conversation, probably several times. As a friend gets up and Ada can finally walk out of this damn room, she replies to Sec Unit's latest requisition form. It's for a gunship nearly the size of Port Free Commerce's transit route. She says, I think you made this one up. There's a break. The Corporation Rim has always been a slave state, though it calls itself its institutionalized slavery and contract labor. The production of human-bought constructs is just a more horrific twist, a mental slavery as well as a physical one. At least victims of contract labor are free to think their own thoughts. But we tell ourselves that constructs aren't aware of their predicament. What Sec Unit makes us realize is that this is not true. They are all aware of what they are and what's been done to them. But the only choice they are ever offered is obedience or pain and death. Ida transfers her attention from the key document to Brad Watch seated in front of her. They are in her office lounge on the comfortable chairs near the balcony that overlooks the station admin's central apron. The large space is lit by floating overhead as they imitate the natural glow of the system monitoring, and they down to take advantage of it. It's quiet out there, except for footsteps people pass by. No music, no babble of advertisements forcing their way into your feet. Ida tells Brad Watch, it's good work. I think you have a chance to persuade them. Brad Watch smiles a little, looking out toward the atrium. Ada has a flash of her sprawled on rocky ground going toward. Valesky screaming somewhere off the camera and winces it away. I think I can persuade them to enact more protections in their own territory, but it feels like so little. She's right, of course. Ida says, until bots have full autonomy, this problem is not going away. And the other problem is that Sec Units aren't bots and aren't human. They fall between the cracks of the existing protections, even in the Preservation Alliance. But Brad Watch's idea for a documentary series has real potential. It can influence people in every corner of the Alliance and, if they're lucky, infiltrate the Corporation Rim in a way nothing else can. But in the best case scenario, it will take years, and even then. She says it's going to be difficult. The propaganda has been so effective. Brad Watch's smile turned on. It worked on us. It did. Ida had known what constructs were, but the full reality of it hadn't hit until she had listened to Sec Unit coax Valesky out of the pit as the jerky video had played in her feed. Along with the horror of what had just happened, there had been a dawning realization that they had fallen into thinking of their Sec Unit as a faceless machine, a convenience, an interface with their security system. But it had taken a sentient being who understood fear and pain to talk his way through Valesky's blind terror. Brad Watch's expression turned serious. We can't ignore the fact that Sec Units are capable of being very dangerous. Glossing over that is just going to make our argument look ridiculous. Her mouth twists. They're every bit as dangerous as humans. Except humans can't fire energy weapons out of their arms. Calculate the exact right moment to jump off a Russian vehicle and survive. or hack the systems of an entire transit station for Ida thinks. Then answers her own point. No, humans have to hire someone to do all that for them, or enslave a bot human construct. She makes a note of that in the open work document in her feed. It's a theme that Brad Watts might build a persuasive argument around. Her feed notifies her of a message packet addressed to her in Brad Watts. It's a link to some sort of catalog weapons supply service. Ida sighs, most amused. She says, it's listening to us right now. It must be hard to respect other people's privacy when you've had to fight and scheme for every minute of your own. Hard not to be paranoid when you remember all the times your paranoia was justified. It's about being treated as a thing, isn't it? Whether that thing is a hostage of conditional value or a very expensively designed, equipped, enslaved machine of organic intelligence. You're a thing and there is no safety. And she tells herself, you're being very foolish. Because you were hostage for a period of days, and it was a minor inconvenience compared to what Murderbot knows, SecUnit. She's never been given permission to use that private name. What SecUnit went through. And if someone else was in her position, she would tell them how unhelpful comparisons like that are, that fear is fear. Brad Watts squints as she reads the message and she laughs. She says, I don't even know what that is. Ida looks at the catalog image. It's the thing that fits on a backpacker harness and has giant extendable spikes. She sends back, all right, I believe that it's real, but it doesn't look very practical. Here's Greg. Ida is in the station hotel suite that they took for SecUnit and the members of the survey team while they were all reporting to the council. Finley, Bradley, and Garatha are still staying here with Arvada and Averse, who are back now after a quick trip down to the planet to see their family. Brad Lodge, who has her own quarters on the station, has dropped in, and Blesky, who is on planet now, has been sending in his work via the station comm. Now that the furor over corporate murder and abduction is dying down, the survey needs to finish its report so the council can decide if they want to pursue their claim on the planet. Ida could work with them on the feed from her office, but she likes being here, sitting on the couches in the common room and talking face to face. The floating display surface is filled with their data and collated notes. SecUnit is tucked into a chair in the corner, probably watching media at its feet. It's good to have you there, too. It's a relief to finally be getting this done, Finley says. She flicks between different displays. She's working on the contract that they would offer to the corporate body who owns the planet in question. In the corporation realm, everything has to be owned by someone. Oberst, sitting with Barada's bare feet on her lap, gestures in frustration. It would be closer to being done if Raffy's tables weren't all over the place and all the links broken. What were you thinking, Raffy? He says, I was planning to sort it all out the day Great Chris started trying to kill us. It was very distracting, Raffy protests. I'll do it, Ida finds herself saying. Can you send me that file? She shouldn't do it, at least not now, so late in the station's day. She should go back to her family and their quarters soon. But it's easier here, where everyone knows what happened, and no one feels the need to ask questions or is trying to get her to tell them everything is fine, and she's exactly the same as she was the day she left. Work is a good excuse. Finley has already pulled up another file and is frowning slightly. She says, I need to review our billing too. Oh, this is ridiculous. We're not paying for their extra power overrun. There's no way they can prove that was us. SecUnit must be watching Finley's feed where the billing documents are, because it says suddenly, you didn't get the retrieve client protocol? They had offered it to Ida on board the ship after the attack, standard for clients who survived traumatic incidents like being abducted and held hostage by corporate rivals. She says, no, I didn't. She didn't want a corporation's excuse for a trauma support specialist poking around in her emotions. She almost adds, I didn't need it. It would be a dead giveaway. And it occurs to her, a giveaway of what? What is she worried about giving away the pheromones people she trusts with her life? SecUnit is looking at the far corner, as it usually does. But they installed cameras for it in these rooms, so it probably is watching her expression. It says, why not? Is it free here? It's not free in the corporation rim. Arvada, Ralph Curled in concentration as she studies the display surface above her head, is still editing her own report. Finley flops back in her chair in exasperation. She says, the stupid bond company lets you get abducted and then wants you to pay for medical assistance afterward? Still not meeting anyone's gaze, SecUnit's expression flashes through a brief, eloquent, ironic twist. Ida hides a smile. Of course you have to pay for it. She adds, we don't have the retrieve client protocol here. Oberst glances over at her, amused, and says, well, we do, it's just not called that. Brad Watts looks up from her feet. Yes, the trauma unit at Vakiva Central Medical has a whole section for emotional support. Valesky said he's been attending regularly. The one at Station Medical isn't as extensive, but I find it helpful. That was taking the conversation to a place Ida didn't want to go. She says, I might have time later. She tells them this easily and pours herself another cup of tea. When she glances up, Secunit is actually looking directly at her. Their gaze is locked for what seems a long moment, but knowing Secunit is probably only a second at most. As its gaze shifts back to the corner, Ida feels her cheeks flush, as if she's been still wrapped up in his feet and reports, expression distant and internal, gets up to fumble for the carafe on the sideboard. He asks, is there any more syrup? I'll get it. Ida takes the chance for a brief escape. I need to stretch my legs. She walks out of the suite, down the corridor to a small lobby area. It's empty and quiet, though the doors to the larger public hotel section are open, where there are potted trees and a wooden canvas art installation mentioned of the traditional preservation camp house. It's getting on toward station light. And hotel visitors on local time will be out looking for entertainment and food. On the far wall, there's a pantry. The case is stocked with cold drinks, soup and tea bottles, packaged self-feeding meals, seasoning packets, and net bags of fruit and vegetables from the planet, cured, peeled, and ready to eat. Ida has been in the corporation room long enough to appreciate the fact that it's free, not only to the hotel's guests, but to anyone who walks in. And what a marvel that is. Just like the station restrooms with showers where the only requirement is that you put your towels in the cleaning unit before you leave. When she closes the door, there's a stranger standing there. A stranger not wearing a station uniform onto the planet. Even before her brain processes all that, she gasps. He says, you are Dr. Mensah, aren't you? It's not a question. He knows exactly who she is. She takes a step back and bumps into someone's chest. Before she can panic, the words are in her feed. It's me. It's Murtabot, Secunit, who was monitoring her feed, or watching on a surreptitiously installed camera, or had simply heard her gasp from down the corridor and heard a room full of conversation. The stranger has had time to process the fact that there is now another person in the room. He raises his hands hurriedly and says, I'm a journalist. I didn't mean to startle. Station security is 47 seconds out. Secunit's voice is deeply conversational and confident. This is a confrontation and knows how to handle it. It's slipped in front of her, reassuringly involved between her and the intruder. It's also somehow managed to catch the syrup bottle she had dropped without noticing, and it sets it on the counter. 46, 45, 44, the journalist flails and runs. The others arrive in the noisy mob, questions worried, Raffy exclaiming, Secunit jumped over my head. It was nothing, Ida assures them. Just a journalist. He startled me. I was distracted and didn't hear him. It's nothing. She hands Raffy the syrup and shoots them back toward the room. I'll talk to security. It's fine, really. They go reluctantly. The fact that she's a current planetary leader weighs less than that she's also their survey captain and they're used to following her orders. As they move noisily back down the corridor, station security is already there, reporting that they caught the journalist leaving the hotel and will verify his identity and release him if it checks out. They will meet her here in a few minutes to make a formal report. She needs to compose herself before they arrive. Secunit is still looming over her, radiating low. They must be able to do that at will. Normally his presence is cool. She's trembling, which is idiotic. Nothing happened. The journalist meant no harm. It could have been a hotel guest or a hungry visitor or the person who stocks the pantry or Secunit is looking down at her. It says, you can hug me if you need to. No, that's all right. I know you don't care for it. She wipes her face. There are tears in her eyes because she's an idiot. It says, it's not terrible. She can hear that Ida remembers even tone. She says, nevertheless, she can't do this. She can't lean on a being that doesn't want to be leaned on. Of all the things Secunit needs, the only ones she can give it are room and time in a relatively safe space to make decisions for itself. Becoming a prop for her feeling emotional stability will be to either one of them be good. Or maybe there's something else she can give it. She looks up, keeping her eyes on his left shoulder, looking at the option of meeting her gaze or not. She says, in all those requisition forms you've been sending me, is there something you actually want? There's a considering pause. It says drones, the small intel ones. Drones, of course, like the ones they had on the survey, which have been extremely helpful. They would be eyes for Secunit in the many places where preservation has no cameras. She says, I'll see what I can do. It's looking down at her still, and she can beat its gaze to make it look away, but that won't make it retreat. It says, is that a bribe? She can't help but smile. It did sound like a bribe, just a little. says, depends, will it work? It says, I don't know, I've never had a bride before. She thinks she's deflected it, but then it comes right back around to her. Maybe you should go to the station medical like Dr. Barad was. She thinks, I can't, I have to tell them what was wrong. And yes, she's aware that she can't bring herself to lie, so she only says, I'll try. There's a quiet, skeptical snort above her head, and she knows sucking isn't full. Station security is in the corridor visiting the outer lobby. Second, it slips away the corridor. Question and answer. Does anybody have any questions? That way I didn't have to call on someone. I was threatened to call on people if nobody has any.
Yeah, so I've read the Murdoch Diaries, kind of and I started doing witch king. It seems a very common trend in some of your writing is on the question of agency and ownership over bodies. And this short story dealt with it. We see the Murdoch books, it was like the witch king. As I'm halfway through, but there's this point about the supernatural beings have like taking ownership of people's bodies. So I'm wondering, especially with questions about like robotics and AI and all that kind of stuff happening today, is there anything in particular that inspired this interest for your works and the way you explore those sci-fi and fantasy, or is it just something that has always interested you? Or
Yeah, I think it's always interested me. It's response to trauma, because a lot of trauma sort of circulates around bodily autonomy and mental autonomy. And I grew up with a lot of emotional abuse. And so just the processes of what that does to you long term have always been something I'm really interested in. So I think that's where it's come from. Someone has described Witch King as like weaponizing your trauma. And I think that's a good way to describe it.
Good. Let's ask just a follow-up question. So, in particular, my students, we read the first half of Witch King this past week, and we were really struck by the bodily autonomy and the respect for the body that Kai has for the bodies that he inhabits, at least for Enna. For Enna, and in particular, the body of the one who wakes up next to him.
Yeah.
And this kind of desire to know and respect what the body's going on. And that kind of, I wonder if you have any comments about like this kind of idea of the body and senses of identity. That the idea becomes like this kind of combination of Kai's body identity as well as that body identity.
Yeah, because it's not like the kind of horror story Christian mythos version of a demon possessing someone, like The Exorcist or anything. It's basically the Seretti, the human civilization he first rose up in. It was basically a sacred funeral practice to unite a demon with a person who died basically before their time. So that's always it was seen as, a beautiful thing. And the continuation of that person. Like I think there's a mention where he also mentions that they did it if someone was murdered, basically because they make you figure out to do it. So that's how he's always been taught to approach it. And what you get hints of, maybe later in the book, I'm not sure. It's been a while since I read it, and it was like a couple of years ago for me. That came from the first, where they had a huge war between the human Seretti and the demons in the Underearth, and which were possessing people and then basically creating witches out of the unions between demons and humans. And it's how they basically, the humans won, and Kai's grandmother forced a treaty on demons, which created all this and turned it into what was a terrible situation, into what was something that everybody had agreed on and was consensual, basically. And that's what he's operating off of. So that's the perspective he comes from. And of course, when the hierarchs come in, they use that against them and tell everyone, you're sacrificing your children to demons. And like Vishasa says at one point, it seems to me it's the other way around. So, yeah, that's what it is.
Thank you for coming out to speak and be at the conference today. This is a question back to your work on Murderbot. The closest parallel to Murderbot's cognition would seem to be someone with an eidetic memory. In your writer's perspective, is that a good parallel, or if not, how does it differ?
Yeah, an eidetic memory, but that's not all of it. It's also being able to do multiple things at one time, which if you have certain kinds of ADHD or OCD, you almost sort of can, but it's mostly, it's not helpful a lot. Anxiety sort of generates that way too, where you feel basically you have multiple streams of things I have to do right away coming at you, and it takes probably a lifetime dealing with that to manage it, as opposed to that's Murderbot's normal. So people have likened it to anxiety or kind of that spectrum of disorders that kind of like revolves around anxiety. That's really a huge part of it. More questions? I will call on people.
I don't know exactly how I want to phrase this, but I was listening to Murderbot as I was driving down here, and I was just thinking about how you managed to sink us into this very intricate and complex world just immediately. And it's so impressive to me, and I just wondered how you, when you're getting ready to write another Murderbot piece, I mean, is there something you have to do to sink yourself back into that? Because it's so intricate and complex. I just thought, it would take a lot to sink my brain and keep my brain back in that if it were me. But I wondered sort of if you have techniques for how you do that.
Not really. It's mostly 30 years of experience in creating those kinds of worlds and characters. With Murderbot, I tend to have to, I always kind of write a lot more than actually ends up in the book. But with Murderbot, I write a ton more than actually ends up in the book. Usually the novellas are only, they're between 33,000, 40,000 words. And I probably write 20,000 words and then throw it out before I even, so that's more than half the novella. And a lot of that is looking for Murderbot's perspective on things and trying to get back into that mindset, because it is a really different mindset. I think the most trouble I had was when I went back and started writing TJ, kind of what I was doing before that. I finished it right before the pandemic, so when it's a murder mystery, the Murderbot solves a murder mystery. So I was first trying to approach it as you would any other murder mystery, with Murderbot questioning people, and man, that wasn't working at all. And finally I realized that's totally the wrong approach. It doesn't solve problems like humans do. It would its first thing would be, well, we need to construct a database with everyone who is possibly in that area, not everyone on the station, and then eliminate it in ways so we can narrow it down to who had an opportunity. And which is sort of how humans do it, but not that efficiently. So then that's not the first thing you move to, is I'll make a database. And it does. So mostly it's trying to get back into that mindset. And also I have a bad habit of starting the story too late. And so there's been books where the original chapter 1 ended up being chapter 8. So you have to find the beginning of the story. And it's kind of like titles. Either it arrives immediately packaged for you in your head, ready to go, or it takes forever, and this constant digging to get there. So All Systems Red just kind of Murderbot Diaries. It was originally called the Murderbot Diaries, and my editor wanted to make that the series name when we decided it was going to be a series. And the first page pretty much just came to me, and then it took off. And I thought, oh, well, these will be quick and easy to do. It's like, no. No, they take months. Network Effect took like 1.5 years. And 1 year was like the first 50,000 words of the book. And like, it was completely different at numerous times. Trying to find that actual beginning just took forever. So, yeah, it's not, it's just, I can't really describe how to do it, but it's not easy. And then,
So do you have any advice for aspiring writers who haven't been published yet?
learn as much as you can about the field. If you want to do professional traditional publishing, just learn as much as you can about the field, because there are so many scams out there aimed at aspiring writers. Because it's a job, but it's a job that's really wrapped up in your emotions and self-worth. And so it can also kind of be a little bit of a minefield. We were talking earlier about how difficult it can be when, if you get that break into publishing and then lose it, and how some people never come back from that. So just kind of learning as much as you can about the field and how it should work, where the money should flow, which is to the writer. You're not supposed to pay agents, you're not supposed to pay publishers, in traditional publishing. And so just kind of do that, and then just write. And I think it took me a long time to learn this, is kind of write what you want to write, because, and don't try to talk yourself into writing what you think people might want, because in genre, which is science fiction, fantasy, mystery, romance, is we're dealing with so many tropes and situations and that are similar to each other or the same to each other, and the thing that you bring to it is yourself, is your perspective and your voice. So writing what you want to write, even if you don't think people will want to read it. I mean, you don't know, being very specific about the feelings and everything, and the characters' emotions and what they're going through is one reason why Murderbot is popular. So you bring yourself to it as much as you can.
I was thinking about why I love him so much, and I was considering the whole idea of the iceberg effect, that what we can see in the book and that's sort of there on the surface is only a sort of a hint into the whole complexity and enormity of the world that is available, that you sort of draw on and imagine. But I also thought that the iceberg effect sort of had something to do with the tone of the books. This is, the world of Murderbot is difficult. There's contract labor, there's slavery, there's all these environmental destruction, and yet the place where we inhabit the story somehow seems able to insulate our feelings from the worst of that, and yet it's not denied that it's there. And I wondered, how do you make the decision about what to put up on the surface closer to the readers and what to sort of layer in below that gives the depth and sometimes the force of the world, but doesn't affect the sort of the lightness of the text? Was that a comprehensible question?
Yeah, it was. And thank you for recognizing the whole iceberg thing, because it throughout my career, I had reviewers say, well, this is a light story. And the people that thought, I didn't do my speech here. I have a speech later. Murderbot is a cute robot story. And you're kind of like, yeah, but what about the slavery? At one point, one of the characters does say, this is slavery, it's horrible. How much more, was it subtle? So yeah, so thank you for talking about the iceberg. A lot of that is kind of self-protection is kind of wound up in a lot of these, because when we go through life and terrible things are happening, either to you or people you know, you kind of have to, you can't emote that all the time. It's kind of like online when you're reading Tumblr or something and somebody's like, no one's upset about this. And it's like, of course we are, of course we all are, but what do you want me to perform for you, like a trained dolphin or something? Is that what you want? That's not how people process emotions and terrible things. even people undergoing terrible situations still make jokes, because otherwise that's how you don't lose your mind. You have to react and emote to these things, but you have to have your own self-protection, which is different for everyone. And so that's what I'm thinking of when I write really intensely from the character's point of view. So, and that's good for description too, is what you're doing is trying to have the character know not just like what they're doing and seeing and stuff, but what they feel about what they're doing and seeing, because that's what the reader really cares about. Now I'm starting to lose my thread. I ramble. But yeah, it's the character's point of view, and the things that are important to them, what's going on, is basically what they feel about what's going on is the tip of, is basically the part you can see. And then the rest of the iceberg will basically be the things that cause those things that they try not to think about, but that you refer to at times because you can't, not do that. Did that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
I just need a reminder, is this part of a work in progress, or is this something that's already been published that we could buy?
Oh, the short story, yeah, it's published. It's on free on the Tor.com site, which I now is reactor.com. The publisher is still Tor.com, which is confusing. But they sell it online for like 99 cents on ebook. And then it's included in a couple of the fancy editions, I think, of Murderbot. But it's just on reactor.com in their short story section.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Can you talk about Murderbot coming to life on Apple TV, how that's going?
Oh yeah, I can't say too much about it because I'm really not supposed to. Not supposed to talk about it. Apple had it shrouded in secrecy even before they greenlit it. So we weren't supposed to talk about it to anybody, and we had to be careful. And the code name for it had a code name we were supposed to refer to it by. It was Sanctuary. That was very good code name. Let me talk about a little of it. They're filming right now. They're filming on March 18th. It's being done by primarily Paul and Chris Weitz of Depth of Field. He's their production company. And they're writing and producing and directing. I think there's going to be a couple of other directors too. And there's like 5 or 6 other producers. And I'm a consulting producer. I got promoted without knowing it. I saw one of the articles, I was like, oh, I got promoted. So, and we've been talking about it. I actually looked back in my emails, and we've been talking about it on the phone since early 2021. So, yeah, and then Apple finally greenlit it after a long process, and then of negotiation back and forth. And they've actually been sending me little clips of the filming. I'm going up there, and it's without the special effects or anything, so unless you know what's going on, it's kind of hilarious. Because the special effects people wear solid green suits, it's like a green pants and shirt and a hoodie, and then a thing pulled over your face, so it can be like taken out of the final thing. But yeah, it's really cool. And I'm going up there in May because I had to finish. I don't think I'm going to finish it by then, but I wanted to get further on in the book I'm working on because it's been delayed. Because last year I had a whole big thing where I had breast cancer in the middle of a lot of travel and my first 2 ever book tours and all that kind of thing. So that year was just a lot. And for some reason, it's hard to write when you're having radiation every day. It's like it does weird things to your brain. But so yeah, it's really just really cool, and it will be very different from the books because you can't take that really internal first-person narrative and make it basically third-person visual without changing stuff. Because there's things that Murderbot tells you, and the character's just telling you in asides that will have to be shown to the viewer. So they'll be adding scenes from different perspectives and stuff. So. But yeah, it's just been a really cool experience so far, so I hope it goes really well. Don't forget there, Walter.
Yeah, I was just wondering what came first in your process of creating Murderbot? I mean, did you come up with this far future dystopia first and then thought to yourself, what's the worst thing that can happen to something?
Yeah,
and create Murderbot, or did you create Murderbot and then have to find a really horrible place to put Murderbot, where Murderbot could exist, right?
Yeah, it was kind of that. It was kind of like the chicken or the egg thing, because when I came up with it, the idea of basically an enslaved security person that had freed themselves from this control, but kind of like ended up doing their job because they didn't, have anything else to do. And, it was just like trapped in a situation, and then ended up having to reveal themselves to save the people that they had started to like. And trying to think how that situation would come about sort of led naturally into corporate dystopia. Because who would do this to someone? Well, a corporation would. They do it right now if they thought they could get away with it. And that's super true. There was I think he was a security expert, who did an article about how he got invited to go to this conference. And it wasn't a conference, it was like on this weird, isolated place, and there was like these rich guys, very, very rich oligarchs, who wanted to talk about how to prepare for the end of the world. And they were not like asking about how do we stop climate change or anything like that. They're asking about, well, like, how will we keep our guards and servants under control? Do you think shock collars would work? And yeah, that sounded as creepy as yes, I can imagine. So, corporations would definitely do it. Nestle would do it, really, that's really true. So it sort of lent itself naturally. And so it's not a far future corporate dystopia. In some ways it's far future, but the corporate dystopia is the near future. So I think they kind of naturally went together.
I think that the corporate dystopia is eternal.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. But yeah, that's how I kind of do characters. It's like I kind of have the world building and the character have to be come up with together, because it has to be the kind of world that this character would live in and that would create them.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to, at least I have to kind of do both at the same time.
Well, I'm going to say I'm not acquainted with your work. Be very getting started. What you might recommend is the first thing to start with.
Well, if you like science fiction, probably starting with All Systems Red, and the first few are novellas, and then there's a couple of novels. If you like fantasy better, Witch King is the place to start, or my older fantasy is back available now. And there are a few books that are standalones, like City of Bones, The Element of Fire, the most recent, my other recent fantasy series was the Books of the Raxura, and the first one of that is The Cloud Roads. And that's sort of a standalone book too. I tend to do my series where most of the books could end at that point, the series could end at that point, because in my level of publishing for a long time, you couldn't guarantee you would sell a series. People are always complaining, well, they didn't finish the series. Well, because the publisher stopped buying them. So I never plan out a series. I only plan out 1 or 2 books at a time. And usually, because that's all publishers buy, is 1 or 2 books at a time. So that's why the series are kind of compartmentalized, so they could end at any point.
I wanted to ask you about the media. One of my favorite scenes in Murderbot is when Art is getting help watching World Hoppers with Murderbot, because he's not able to really appreciate World Hoppers unless he's got someone else to do it with. And it was a moment in the story that reminded me of Joe Walton's novel, among others, where there's this sense of community that's created by other people that are like you, that like these kinds of stories, like going to science fiction conventions and stuff. And it made me think about the power of media to bring people together, and how you're using it in Murderbot. I wanted to ask a little bit more about Sanctuary Moon, or about how you're using media for Murderbot stories.
Well, it was interesting because TV and movies were always really important to me as a kid as well as reading. And when after I first got published, I joined SIPLA and I was in on Genie, which was a bulletin board service, and that was the early SIPLA. I was going, oh my God. Yeah, that was the early SIPLA online forum. And there's this thing where people would be really contemptuous of TV and movies, science fiction and fantasy, how terrible it was. And it's like, dude, the translated Godzilla movie is not aimed at you. It's aimed at kids and people who like that kind of thing, so maybe not. It's not supposed to be more in these. So there was sort of no idea of scale there, the fact that some things are literally produced just for fun, and it doesn't particularly matter if they make sense. And that was just really, really kind of alienating, though in a way it kind of took me a long time to understand how alienating that was. Though there were people who protested. There was one guy who came in and said, we love TV. We have 7 TVs in this house. There's one of them now playing Lawrence of Arabia in the living room like you have other people who play music. I was like, oh, yes. So yeah, I think that's where it comes from. And the fact that, I don't want to do my speech, but it was such especially during the pandemic, it was, and before that, starting in 2016, where, our political situation started to become personally dangerous to a lot of people, as opposed to other, the number of people that they've been personally dangerous to before. Just that needing some place to retreat to became more important. I think more people online were, that I was seeing talk about were my age or younger, where that TV had been very important to them when they were kids as a way of community, and who had been kind of kids or during the Star Wars, when you started to feel belonging to a new group of people as fans because of Star Wars. And there've been more things since then, like Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings drew a lot of people together. And sort of seeing that, even if there's people you don't have a lot of friends you relate to where you live, being able to connect online and see, oh yes, there's all these other people who like Godzilla movies or, Battlestar Galactica or whatever, and feel that, oh, I'm not weird and strange. This is good. A lot of these people who say smart things and I like to talk to like it too. So I try to do this. So I think it comes from that, and the fact that there's other stuff I was going on. Oh, we're almost done. But there was a thing about some articles about a couple who their son, when he was very young, was on the autism spectrum, and he was really profoundly kind of shuttered off from them, and it was extremely difficult for him to communicate. And one of the things, they had been just putting on movies, they were putting on a lot of Disney movies and kids movies for him. And they had a Disney movie on at one point, and he said, something about one of the characters. Well, he thinks this. And they were just like, because he was really at the point where he did not react to people. And so they realized it was taking a while, but the movies were giving him context for his emotions, because he recognized the character's emotion as the same as his. And so it was like, oh, and this is how you react to that, and this is what it's called. And so it basically helped him build context for stuff that he hadn't been able to do before. And then now he's, this was a while back, so he probably graduated, he went to college, and everything. He just pulled him out of there and let him create his world build, basically, so he could use the world. And that really struck me, that's what Murderbot probably did with Sanctuary Moon. But that was a way to get, it was not only an escape, but it was a way to kind of say, yeah, people are angry. This thing is, you're right to be angry about this. You're right to be upset about this because this is how people feel. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Well, we should, be certain to give our special guest of honor a little bit of a break before the signing of the weapon. So please join me in giving her a hand. Signing will start in just a few minutes. If you would like to purchase one of her books or one of our other authors, they are back there. They can sign here. And yeah, thank you all. Oh, and don't forget, we have the lunch coming up and everything else happening, y'all. Come do something.